don't have Asperger's, but my son does. And personally, I am just sick and tired of hearing from the establishment and just people in general that it's like this big problem that we have to address. My son was diagnosed with Asperger's at the age of 2. And from the very beginning, I've been told that there's work to be done to make him fit in and be normal, that he's never going to be normal. I've always had an issue with that. However, watching him grow, and at this point he's 6, but really watching him come into his own, I've observed his Asperger's as being an incredible gift. Elon Musk's recent Asperger's news.
I'm actually making history tonight as the first person with Asperger's to host SNL.
Prove this to me. And in today's video, I'm going to be sharing the common Asperger's challenges that I've observed in my son and how they're actually assets for anybody who ever aspires to become an entrepreneur, just like Elon. Before we go ahead and dive in, for the very best advice on creating that business and lifestyle so you can achieve the freedom and flexibility that you've always wanted, be sure to hit subscribe and tap that bell so you get notified the next time a new video airs. If you're new here, my name is Corrie. I go by Corrie Lowe, and I'm a business strategist, coach, and TEDx speaker, and I help people become entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is not something I ever expected to get into. In fact, I have a fine arts degree. However, entrepreneurship runs deep in my roots. So I am a third generation entrepreneur, and I've been starting businesses, come to find out, my entire life. My very first one I started at 7 years old. And years later, I was the third generation to be running my family's wholesale distribution business. And I had done that for over 15 years before I started my entrepreneurial coaching practice. So with that said, I know what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. And I also know that my son has exactly what it takes to become the fourth generation of entrepreneurs in our family. I've also been super annoyed being told by educators that my son's behaviors are things that we need to change so he can be normal like the other kids. These differences are the exact reason why he, Elon, and other folks with Asperger's have exactly what it takes to be the change makers and disruptors that we need in this world. So today, I'm sharing the behaviors I've been told that my son needs to address so he can fit in, as well as the reasons why these so-called behaviors will set him up to change the world in a big way. So as I mentioned, I don't have Asperger's, my son does. And I do realize that, it's a spectrum disorder, autism spectrum disorder. So there's a lot of different ways that people, show their spectrum. And from what I'm speaking on today, this is directly just what I've observed in my son. I do know if you're out there and you have Asperger's and you're watching this, it may be different for you. And I invite you to, let me know in the comments how this resonates for you or what ways it shows up for you, because I'm always looking to learn more so that I can better support my son. So thank you for that. So let's go ahead and jump in. First thing I've noticed in my son is he has difficulty reading social cues, right? Very, very difficult for him to read social cues, and he's an awkward communicator. He's very blunt, very black and white, does not understand sarcasm, and this can really kind of make people uncomfortable in a way, and it's one of the things that, I've been told that we need to help him address. He also takes everything literally. It's very black and white. He doesn't take sarcasm. If you're joking with him, he thinks you're serious. And that, view of the world is very specific to him, but he just cannot process any kind of nuances. He also has difficulty focusing, especially, any kind of reading. Unless it's something that he really likes, he's just not going to read about it. This is something that educators have been really concerned about with him being in school. But I view it as an asset. I'm going to share why in a second. He also has an extremely difficult time transitioning between activities. You have to give him a lot of notice up front when we're going to be changing activities so that he's aware of what the routine is and what's going to happen. But if you just try to change the activity right away, he kind of has a meltdown because he's kind of in the zone. He also at times can have explosive reactions to things. just in general. He has difficulty controlling his emotions sometimes. It's kind of over the top, and he expresses it in his very own unique way. And these are not things that I necessarily feel that he should have to, cater to somebody else. And these are things that I actually find are going to be an asset to him later on. And I'm going to be sharing on that in a second. So I'd love to know if you found this video and you are on the spectrum, please comment below. Let me know. I'd love to meet you. And I'm always looking to connect with people who are going to help me understand my son better. So thank you, and I can't wait to meet you. All right, so I shared, some of my son's behaviors that I've been told are negatives, uh, and we should change or address. And right now, I'm going to talk a bit about why I personally feel that these are assets to him becoming an entrepreneur, if that's something that he ever decides that he would like. First up is, him being awkward and not seeing social cues. Now, this I find is a tremendous asset because it doesn't matter what he does not take rejection personally. It is just like he forgets about it 2 seconds later because he just doesn't get it. If somebody is being sarcastic or somebody is shooting him down, he just always goes like, oh, well, that's on him and I'm awesome. And he just kind of goes off on his merry way. So I think that the fact that he doesn't have that kind of same lens that the rest of us view rejection through is a huge, tremendous asset, because if there's anything that an entrepreneur has to be very good at, it's learning how to deflect rejection. And I find my son does that naturally. Another asset, like I talked about before, in him having difficulty switching activities, right, is that he thrives on a routine, right? So long as he knows when the activity is going to change and what that activity is going to be, he does fine. So having a routine is key for him. And as an entrepreneur, being consistent is one of the most important things that you have to have, right? Right up there with the, being able to deflect rejection. So having, consistency in routines and doing the same things over and over and over again as an entrepreneur, that's what's going to help you see the success that you're looking to see, in your new business. So that's a huge asset. The other thing I've been told in his behaviors is, how he communicates. He's very black and white. He's very blunt, right? He states the obvious. He doesn't understand nuances. And for an entrepreneur, so many entrepreneurs, especially new ones, they don't want to offend anybody, right? They kind of like dance around issues, or they don't want to ask for what they want for fear of what people will think of them. And it kind of puts them in a, the rear seat in terms of negotiations, right, for their new business. For someone like my son, it's actually a tremendous asset because he just says exactly what he wants. And he's, even now as his mom, with him being 6, every single day is a negotiation for something that he's looking for. And he's very blunt in saying exactly what it is that he wants, because that's the only way he knows how to talk about it. And I just find that just so fascinating. And I'm really curious to see whether or not he takes this as a skill to do something with it at a later date as he grows older. So again, being blunt in your communications isn't a bad thing, especially if you want to be an entrepreneur. Another thing I mentioned earlier in terms of his focus, he has difficulty focusing, has difficulty reading, unless it's a subject that he's really interested in. So he has very intense, subject focused fixations. For my son in particular, it used to be airplanes, anything aerospace. He loves planes, he loves, space, very similar to Elon in that aspect, but he absolutely loves that. Very recently, he's been hyper fixated on, of all things, the Titanic, which I don't get, but he knows every single fact. He knows, when the ship sank, the time, like it's ridiculous the amount of stuff he knows. Herein lies why that's an asset, because his intense fixation allows him to focus more time and attention to detail on things that the rest of us just might not get. And that's really one of the reasons too why I feel folks like Elon have been so successful, because they are so passionate about very specific things, And that, that passion and that fixation allows them to spend the time working on it in order to see through their vision. And in doing so, they're also very creative because because of their fixation, they're able to see all those little details and be able to think about things differently than the rest of us would, because we don't see it, because we're not as in it every single day the same way they are. So that is just a huge, huge asset as an entrepreneur. And last but not least, I kind of just alluded to this, but my son, because, and this is actually kind of a funny story, so he does not like to conform to what other people tell him to do. So as an example, at school, they do these, dress up days for school. Dress up as your favorite, storybook character, dress up for your favorite sports teams. And his answer always, without a doubt, is they can't tell me what to do, because he thinks outside of the box and he views himself as this, independent thinker outside of what the masses at school do. Thinking outside the box is such an important skill to be able to learn at a young age, and even later on as you're an entrepreneur, because this is how you become the change maker, right? Is by being able to see things and see routines differently. And some famous entrepreneurs besides Elon, who obviously, has made a huge impact on green energy and on space travel and all these things right now that he is known and like revered for at this point. Some other famous people with Asperger's who have always inspired me even before I knew about my son's diagnosis was Temple Grandin was one of them. She had actually innovated the way that cattle farming happens, in particular the meat packing part of it, when you're actually slaughtering cows, as gruesome as that sounds. She had this way of looking at it that she wanted to make it more humane, and she completely kind of revolutionized the way that farms are, slaughtering animals now. And I always found that to be a really fascinating story, because she saw something that was common in every day and she thought of a different way to do it, right? Just the way her brain was wired. To be able to change and impact things, and she took action on it too. So that was one, example of thinking outside of the box. Another one that I always found inspiration in too is Tim Burton. As an example, I only very recently, while researching for this specific video, found out that he is on the spectrum as well. And I've always been kind of blown away by how he takes his vision in his head and portrays it into film. It's very, very stylized. When you see one of his films, it's obvious, it's a Tim Burton production. And, it's just a way of thinking and viewing the world that's very different from everybody else. And some folks, especially on the spectrum, they have a really unique way of being able to take what it is that they think and they see, which is very different than the norm, and being able to present it in a creative way to the rest of the world and to help, like I said, be a change maker and have an impact. So that sums up why I personally believe both my son as well as other folks on the spectrum and with Asperger's have what it takes to become an entrepreneur, just like Elon. Think you do too? If so, I've got the perfect resource to get you started. My entrepreneurial mindset quiz helps you get a clear picture on what skills you have naturally, as well as what you'll need to build in order to find freedom and flexibility as an entrepreneur. Get started today by clicking the link below in the description. Check out these videos next to learn even more ways to enhance your business and lifestyle. And if you liked today's video, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. I'll see you next time.